Morgan's story. The entire forest ignited the night Morgan died. His brother roared to the stars, noise hardly suffocated by the crackling smoke. This rage spread in flame for hundreds of miles, fresh rainfall providing no protection against the heat. Thriving evergreens caught instantly, endless acres of old growth thinned to ember. Fauna, fleeing from the ravaged shelter, cried with him, but none of Kavadi's followers left the scene until it was as black as he felt. The bonfire tonight was but a small echo of Kavadi's rampage. None save a few scattered goblins joined, allowing him to sulk without chatter. Kavadi looked deep into the flames as if he were staring straight into the place they came from. Great changer. Nung'l interrupted this silence, breaking him from his trance. Kavadi forced his stiff body to look at the kid. My dad told me stories about Father Morgan from decades past. He told me he was the most feared man on Tatu, the quiet killer, the most expensive too, 1,000 links ahead. Who knows what the council would have paid for his? They never would have gotten it, though. That's how talented he was. The whole island knew his name, but they didn't know his secret. The fire crackled. Kavadi didn't say a word. Forgive me, sir, the young goblin continued. I just don't understand. The most dangerous man on the island, the coldest, merciless executioner, gives his life for you, his estranged brother. The others in the circle held their lips tight, resonating palpable nervousness toward Nung'l's line of questioning. I mean, if you were to believe the legends, you would think he was incapable of love at all. The surrounding goblins flinched when Kavadi straightened his spine, but the man didn't get angry. He simply remained, arms folded, continuing to stare into the fire. Then he spoke. He loved once. Morgan held his stance, feet pressed into the thick grass he had used for whistles when he was younger. School had ended hours ago. The lawn remained empty and quiet. He rammed his arms out, stiff, palms spread. His fingers tingled as he threw a wedge of dark energy across the yard. With the first two fingers of her hands, Sela pulled it apart before impact. Almost, she said, tying the strings of her burgundy silk uniform. A gold pattern of a serpent and flame danced across the whole thing, the insignia of Morgan's family. It just needs to be a bit more precise. Morgan straightened out. He bent his knee over his toe, his back leg straight. He kept his legs just wider than his shoulders, creating a hollow space beneath his groin, both front to back and side to side. Breathing, he drowned out all thoughts but condensing the air, of pulling the ether through it. He sent his palms at her once more. And once again, she ripped the throw apart. The matter vanished. Sela giggled at his frustrated groan. Her silky strands of black hair were but a few inches longer than his, her skin just a shade lighter. He repositioned once more, this time much quicker. He shoved his fists into the air with full intensity, strained muscles, irritated. Sela's eyes widened as the thing launched toward her. It was opaquer than the others and much larger. She screamed as she jumped beneath it, then pounced back up with 2 fingers in the air. A light, thin blackness surrounded each of Morgan's wrists and whipped him backward, pinning him to the willow trunk behind him. She walked to him slowly. Her swagger returned. With a swift motion, his ankles were clamped as well. Morgan squirmed against the trunk. She leaned over, arms supporting her on either side of his head. She kissed him with soft lips. You're cute when you're angry, she said. Get me out of this, he said. You have to be more precise. I don't know what that means, he said. Every one of those would have hit you. Well, yeah, she said. That's because they were giant. It's impressive, really. That last one might have killed me. No one in class comes close to that. What's your point? My point is, she said, skipping away. Let's see those blasts free you now. Morgan shook himself against the tree, moving any way he could to get out. Sela stopped in her place. Give up? Let me go, he said. She lifted with her fingers, and the bands dissipated. Morgan's body thumped the grass. I'm done for today, he said, as she made her way back over. She sat down beside him, against the trunk. She rubbed his bicep. Why are you so mad? I can't fail again, Morgan said through heavy breath. Because of Father? He pressed through his nose. I'm the only one who should be calling him that. He closed his eyes, shook his head. Still, he doesn't care. I'm an embarrassment. No, you're not, she said. Why isn't he helping you? He exhaled through a narrow slit in his lips. He doesn't even know where I am, he said. Her head fell on his shoulder. He's missing out. Their eyes met. Smile, she said. Today is beautiful. His lips rose. There, she said. I like that. The sun reached the point where it touched the horizon below the island, beneath the floating land they stood on. The sky deepened to orange. She nuzzled her head into his shoulder, and he lifted his arm up around her. They listened to the creek trickle behind them. As the sun fell farther, so did Morgan's eyes. When the sky became cloaked in darkness, he rustled himself alert. He stood in a second. What is it? Sela asked. I have to go, he said, tying the top of his uniform around his waist, revealing the cream shirt underneath. You're not meeting with those guys, are you? She asked. I have to, tonight. I almost forgot. You can't stay? You know they need me. He hunched down to his knees and kissed her. I love you. I love you too, she told him as he walked with haste off the lawn. Be safe, she shouted, but he was already to the dirt road at the bottom of the hill. He met the goblins in the usual place, the wet brick of the alley behind Squonk's pub. 6 of them perched about on the trash vessel or leaned against the wall. They howled and clapped when he approached. Finally, Cedro croaked. Get us something. He tilted his head to the back door of the pub. Raucous voices poured from it. Morgan looked about the 6 of them, their gray skin, slender limbs, wrinkled faces. You got cash? Scattered chatter. You're a Bane, Cedro said. Go. Morgan nodded, moving around to the front of the pub. He couldn't argue. He entered the mass of big-bellied village folk, yelling and throwing darts, and as he wedged his way to an opening at the bar, he couldn't help but notice glances from the patrons. He thought at first they recognized him, but there seemed to be an animus attached, as if they smelled the stench of goblin on him. He filled 2 growlers with berry cider and returned to the alleyway, where Cedro popped a cap to one of them and swigged. Why are you all hanging out here? Let's go somewhere, Morgan said. Where? One of them snapped. Your place? Morgan clenched the bottle when it came around. He took a sip. Exactly, the goblin said. What you wearing? Cedro asked, eyeing Morgan up and down. My uniform, he said. Roaring cackles followed. The other 6 seemed to be wearing an informal uniform as well, all black, most of them hooded. They passed the bottles around the circle. You can't be seen with us looking all pretty, said Cog, with dark swells around his eyes and cuts across his arm. You look bigoted as your dad, came another. He's not a bigot, Morgan growled. The goblins turned silent. He's developing a program to integrate your kind into the school. What makes you think we want to go to your school? Cedro asked. I didn't say you, Morgan said. I meant goblins with potential. The cackles returned. Morgan couldn't help but smile. What happened to you, Cog? He asked across the huddle, eyeing the goblin scrapes. Enforcer, what you think? He asked. Hardly escaped. Morgan's teeth gritted. It should be me. He can't keep doing this to you guys. You hardly have training. A couple howls grew. Oh yeah, we should stay at home, Cedro mocked. Hear that, guys? We have no training. The others laughed. It's not right that I can't be there, Morgan said. I've done nothing but prove that I'm with you. You look more like an enforcer than half of them in armor, Cog said. Your father schooled most of them, Cedro chimed in after a lengthy gulp. Am I him? Morgan roared. Do I act like him? Do I even talk to him? Silence choked the goblins. You don't want to be doing this, Cog said, softer this time. It's starting to feel personal. Beck didn't deserve it, Morgan said. We've lost 9 this year, another goblin said. 9. All by the same guy. Don't they have anything else to worry about? Some of us get caged, Cog said. But if you run in a graft, he brushed his dark, serrated nails against his wounds. You're not so lucky. Is it possible he's just the one put on those assignments? Morgan cleared his throat. None of us were there. How much did they fight? Does it matter? Cedro asked. I'm just saying he might not be targeting anybody, right? He could have just been defending himself. 9, Morgan. He's a goblin hater. Like all of them. Simple as that, Cedro said. We don't know that, Morgan said. You don't, said Cog. Because he wouldn't do it to you. Wait a minute, Cedro said. This isn't you. This is that girl. He looked around at the others. What's that name again? Agoseris? She's been filling you with this shit. Sela is her name, Morgan said. The 6 of them erupted in laughter. You want so bad to be a part of us, so bad to know what it feels like, and you're laying with the enforcers now. She's not one of them, came Morgan through gritted teeth. You're right, Cedro said. She was just raised by their morals, supported by their income, molded by their techniques. Morgan balled his fist. Not so different from you, really. Enough said Morgan. Cedro came off the vessel, stumbling from the cider. Oh, psh, what are you gonna do? Tell Dad? He looked to the others for encouragement, but none came. They looked frightened. He returned his gaze to Morgan. Just wait till Petrie hears you've been laying with Graft's daughter. Black energy formed around Morgan's fists before he even fully processed the goblin's words. He raised them, primal emotions in full control. Morgan, relax, Cog said. He's messing around. Am I? Cedro asked. What kinds of things are you saying to her when we aren't around? His gaze bounced across the others' faces. Well, if it were up to her, we'd all be bloody as Cog. Cedro listened to the crackling energy. Go ahead. That's what they want anyway. Beat me like your bitch wants you to. Morgan shook, trying to restrain himself. Here, I'll help you, Cedro said, the last 2 words slurred together. He launched his palms outward, shooting a slab of darkness at Morgan. Morgan punched, shoving matter twice as large, twice as thick, through Cedro's blow. The goblin took the blunt force of vibrating energy, which smacked him into the brick of the pub. Blood trailed off as he slid down onto the hard floor. The 5 others had wide eyes as they looked at Morgan, but they stayed put. A couple of them trembled. Morgan looked at Cedro's mangled body and across the others' faces. His pupils twitched as he thought. He couldn't pinpoint the feeling. Not quite fear, not quite guilt, not quite anger, but some potion of them all. Without a word, he darted from the scene, through the back alley toward home. He ignored the bright beams of light coming through the enormous windows of the classroom the next day. The burgundy curtains remained tied to hooks fastened to the brick. As the professor droned about the theory behind group chants, Morgan wondered when he'd get to use them in practice. A sporadic tap interrupted this thought. Morgan once again glanced at the window. A crow had landed, pecking at the glass. Annoyed, Morgan thickened the air around the bird, vibrated it. It shot off in a second. And then it returned. Tap, tap, tap. Morgan stared at the thing until he saw something below. Cedro, with a braced arm and a bandaged head, stood alone on the grass. Morgan stood up in a second. I have to use the bathroom, he announced, before throwing himself between desks and scooting out of the room. He joined Cedro beyond the courtyard. What are you doing here? He asked. Petrie sent me. He wants to speak with you. The words sliced his ear. A nervous pause. What? Petrie wants to speak with you. Do you know where he lives? Look, whatever this is, we can work it out between the 2 of us. Should I tell him you refused? Morgan looked him up and down. He'll kill me. He's going to kill me. Cedro looked at him blankly. Go, said. Get out of here, before someone sees. Fine, but go see him. It'll be a lot worse, if he has to find you. Cedro turned around and kept walking. Morgan looked back at the classroom window, at the school, and thought. He went around back to the narrow path through the trees leading to Petrie's cottage. Nervousness panged him with each step. He'd never been this deep in the woods before. His father had warned him of the criminals who lived within, those fearing the public eye. The thick evergreens almost fully eclipsed the sun, only allowing specks of light to poke through. Besides the distant birds, they seemed to dull all sound as well. Morgan listened to his heavy breath persist. His steps crunched the needles on the ground. This all made the trek much worse. The trees eventually opened, revealing a small cottage on the other side. A stone chimney rose above its moss-covered wood. Morgan took slow steps before lifting the thick door knocker. After a moment, the peep hatch slid, and out came Petrie's croak. Morgan Bane, come in. When the door opened, Petrie stepped to the side to allow his guest to come through. Even with a slight hunch, he stood a head taller than the boy, the tallest goblin Morgan had seen. Petrie eyed his uniform. I'm sorry to interrupt your studies. Morgan entered slowly, keeping both hands at his waist, ready at any moment to make a move. I was just rustling up some grub myself, said the goblin. He sat down at the end of a thick oak table. Wood scraps and sawdust laid around the place, enough to assume Petrie built it himself, enough to assume he made most things himself. Even his shirt, rough and patched, looked home-stitched. Would you like anything to eat? Morgan glanced at the raw meats on the goblin's plate. The elder began to eat with his hands, wedging skin and fat between sharp teeth. I'm okay, Morgan said. He couldn't take it anymore. Listen, sir, if this is about the fight... Please, Morgan, you needn't brag. Excuse me? I knew you were strong before you threw Cedro into some bricks. Had it coming, huh? What is this about, sir? Fervor was murdered this morning. Do you know who that is? Morgan shook his head. Perhaps the greatest weapons manufacturer this island has ever seen. The most talented goblin, at least. Petrie slammed a wooden device on the table with a loud thud. He slid it across to Morgan. He crafted this sprig. Morgan examined the thing. It looked like a wand, but it was thicker, and had an orb on one end. The simplest way to end a life, Petrie continued. Quick and pain-free. Takes a talented mind to run one properly, of course. With your power, you wouldn't need to use one at all. Morgan slid the sprig back. Fervor is an enormous loss in our community. You can imagine, Petrie said. This is several years' setback, perhaps. Let alone an unjustified tragedy. The monetary loss is incalculable. Was it graft, sir? Morgan asked. Petrie cracked a wide, slow smile. Indeed it was. Graft Agoseris. His grin faded promptly. I've let this go on for too long. We need to send a message. We need to let him know that we aren't as powerless as he may think. Morgan's words were softer than usual. What sort of message, sir? Petrie stood up and fetched a small chest off the ground. Out rang a piercing metallic thud as he dropped it on the table. I need his wand. Secure it in here and bring it to me. If you rough him up in the process, better. Morgan was tense. I don't know. He's a top enforcer. I have no experience. Oh, but you left my experienced killer bludgeoned, said Petrie. It must be you. Rumor has it you have the most insider information on his whereabouts. I don't know, said Morgan. He'll recognize me. The others have doubts about you. Say your allegiance is split, said Petrie. I vouched for you before. I feel your anger, your thirst for justice. Don't make me look like a liar, Morgan. He pulled a black key from his shirt pocket with a lace attached. He slid it across the table to the boy. If you do this, you're one of us. Petrie didn't allow much time to calculate. Morgan closed his eyes for a beat, thinking of any new reason to decline, and then opened them. Nothing came. He nodded. It's the right thing to do, isn't it? Petrie nodded. He deserves much, much worse. Morgan put the key around his neck. He stood and grabbed the chest on both ends. By week's end. Understood? Yes, sir, Morgan said. Petrie, the goblin corrected him. Good luck, boy. It was a long morning. Morgan sat on the hard stool of the classroom, replaying Petrie's words in his mind. He couldn't distract himself from them. They repeated over and over, louder than the professor in front. He thought of how he would do it. Day? Night? How would he isolate Graft? How could he not reveal himself? It'd be easiest when he was at Graft's house with Sela, but he could never do it in front of her. She'd leave him. In the afternoon, he did exercise training on the lawn with his classmates. It was the only class he had with her. As soon as the class broke into groups, he ran to her, pulled her by the wrist downhill to the creek. They hid beneath the willow's long branches. Their lips meeting was the first time in the day that Morgan had thought of nothing at all. She pinned him to the tree with ether, bit his lip. He pulled back. You love tying me to this. She grinned. You don't like it? Her big brown eyes reflected the sunlight. You better learn some new tricks before they recruit you for enforcement. She slumped down to his side, an utter depletion of energy. Morgan rubbed his wrist as she dissolved the bands. She wrapped her arms around her legs. Not all of them are bad. Another was killed yesterday, Morgan said. The manufacturer, right? He's responsible for hundreds of deaths. I have yet to meet a good goblin. There are other species in the Nung'l. Fine. Most goblins are evil. Morgan shook his head. When Tatu rose, the human sorcerers were most powerful. So they formed institutions that only made that power gap wider. To this day, there is nothing in place for goblins. So of course they're going to be violent. You always talk about how much they need you, but the more this type of stuff happens, the more they prove themselves to be dangerous, heartless, the more it seems like you need them. Morgan paused, thinking. Beck didn't deserve to be killed. Beck was a dealer, though, wasn't he? But he was just minding his own business, and his weapons killed dozens of people. He didn't deserve to be killed. He killed people, Morgan. So he should be caged. It wasn't the decision of an enforcer. But it's the decision of a goblin? You have no idea what my dad faces every day. The goblins are brutal, vicious. Any wrong move, even a slight one, and an enforcer is dead. They show no mercy. But an enforcer should. The life of a criminal, a murderer, is more important. If he hadn't done it, he would have been the one dead. You get that, right? Morgan's eyes watered. As he felt the emotion build in her voice, his words choked. What's wrong? She asked. Nothing, he said, trying to restrain his nerves. You're right. I'm sorry. He couldn't get it off his mind. If he backed out, the Nung'l would never trust him. Petrie might get violent, even. If he did it, and Graft found out, he'd lose everything. He walked past the door of his next class, up the stairs to his father's office. A man in a burgundy cloak stood in front of the door. Is my dad in there? Morgan asked him. The man shook his head, slowly. Is he in the building? Again, the man negated. Morgan rushed back down the stone stairs. He raced to the lowest floor, dragging his fingers across the bricks. Eventually, he found a divot and slid the wall back, revealing another stairway. He paced down it, lit only by flaming torches. At the bottom, another cloaked figure stood. Whoa, he said, arms out. Students aren't allowed down here. Let me in, Crow, Morgan commanded. Father didn't tell me to make exceptions. Let me see my dad, Crow. Crow stepped to the side, unlatching the metal bars. Morgan walked into the cold dark of the basement, listening to the sound of dripping water echo against the stone walls. A torch lit the corner. Morgan crept toward it, spying on his dad dance about with a boy in exuberance. The two chanted together, some ancestral phrase over and over again. Dad? Morgan called. Malachi Bane turned, allowing light to shine on the long-haired boy behind him. The kid looked just a few years older than Morgan. Morgan, Malachi said. What are you doing down here? Morgan squinted at the boy, his tan skin, their matching robes. This is what you're doing? He asked. Malachi cleared his throat. Say hello to Kiva. Morgan paused, refusing to look Kavadi in the eyes. He's starting to look like me. Well, he's your brother, isn't he? Malachi asked. Is he? Morgan returned, eyeing the specks of gray in his father's long goatee. He looks like me, technically, Malachi said. Will he ever attend school? Morgan asked. No, Malachi said. I see no reason for that. The school is obsolete for his potential. I'm very busy, Morgan. I'm sure you can tell. What can I help you with? I need to talk to you about something, he said. I don't know what to do. Malachi's attention remained on Kavadi behind him, dragging his thumb across his cheek. I'm scared, said Morgan. At this, Malachi turned again. He examined his son's face. It's important, I think, this opportunity, Morgan continued, but I don't know who I might hurt. And Sela... This is about continually failing your defense exam, Malachi asked. Just do your homework. Train harder. Stop spending so much time with that girl. Please, Morgan. I have work to do. It's not that exactly, Morgan said. Morgan, enough! Malachi erupted. You have everything. Please, stop whining so much. I'm busy. Okay, Dad, he said. I'm sorry. He turned toward the entrance, and his father's attention had returned to the boy. They continued their chant. As Morgan reached the top of the stairs, their harmonious laughter rang out. Nightfall, and Morgan walked out the large oak doors of his basement. He looked up at the tower. The room was lit, but he didn't know if his father had come home. His mother was probably in bed, reading. His father in the study, or anywhere else at all. The thought of this made his jaw tense, his stomach ill, his hands numb from vibration even before the matter formed. He walked toward the village market in his normal street clothes, his thick-skinned jacket and lace trousers. He tied a mask over his head, an old potato sack tailored to the facial structure of a goblin. The sleeves, for its long nose and sharp chin, dangled off his face, empty. He didn't carry a weapon, just the chest with one hand. As he approached, he had to change courses. A couple trolls had showed up, giant, bloated, nude, sniffing around for scraps at the vacant vendors. He avoided them and headed up the North Hill. Atop sat rows of homesteads, modest but sturdy enough, bigger than the huts to the east, smaller than any home he'd grown up in. He gazed into a window of the olive house. Through the pale blinds he saw Sela's outline, still and silent in her bed. His heart battered. He circled to the other side of the home. The next window was several feet higher, on the second story. Morgan set the chest on the ground. He squatted and shoved his fist down, sending energy into the earth below. He launched up and grabbed the edge of the roof with one arm, looking in. Graft lay in his bed, alone. Morgan had never seen him without his dark locks tied up. He likely slept with his wand. It was nearby. He'd have to search for it. Morgan was no fae. He'd surely wake the man up. He raised his fist, absorbing black around it. Nausea filled his body as he looked at Graft's hand, dangling from the edge of the bed. He had one shot. No matter the outcome, Morgan felt guilty, weak. He just hoped the feeling would vanish by the time it was over. When he couldn't handle the matter's vibration, Morgan released it full force through the glass. The shards blasted in, the energy slicing into the bed, collapsing the wood on impact. Morgan observed the damage, but there was no body, no sign of Graft whatsoever. "Who's there?" The voice came from behind him. He dropped down to the earth where the enforcer had teleported. Morgan stared for a moment, breathing, before Graft drew his wand. Reflective black armor appeared from smoke in the air. It covered his dark garments. Morgan stepped forward, launching slabs his way. With a swish of Graft's wand, they dissolved. "Who put you up to this?" Graft asked. Morgan tuned out the words, snarling. He took another step. Listening would only make it worse. Graft lifted his wand, and rock cemented Morgan's front foot to the ground. He lowered it in a flat line, and the earth collapsed below him. Morgan fell into the hole to his chin. The wand bounced between Graft's knuckles in intricate patterns as the hard earth closed in around Morgan's neck. Morgan killed all thoughts, letting his muscles take over. He shoved his energy through the closing earth and knocked it back. He blasted himself out of the ground, landing just feet in front of the enforcer. Graft sent the wand behind him. Pulling a boulder from below the earth's surface, he launched it at the boy. Morgan remained in a solid stance. He punched, sending a hunk of matter through the rock. The shards exploded out, not slowing the dark energy a bit. It persisted to the enforcer, hit his wand at full impact. The blast ripped it from him, taking half of his forearm with it. Graft's mouth dropped as he looked at his severed arm. Morgan held out his hand, covering the detached limb in darkness before pulling it through the air. The wand bloodied his palm as he removed it. Morgan moved in, watching the man's chin quiver. Graft fell to his knees, choked up. "I'll find out who you are," he said. Morgan used the free arm to squeeze his neck. "What is this?" Graft asked with the last breath. "Justice," Morgan said. He held until the man lost consciousness. Morgan dropped him, arms covered in blood. The hand splattered into the chest when he dropped it. With the key on his necklace, he turned the lock. Clenching the chest to his waist, he left Graft's body in the damaged earth. His thoughts returned, a deep sadness flooding him. He hobbled down the hill, still able to restrain even a single tear. He paused, though, to let his vomit spill onto the grass. He passed its slow trickle behind him. Smoke wafted out of Petrie's chimney when Morgan approached. Even in such early hours of morning, the goblin was awake. Morgan clanked the door knocker. "Morgan!" Petrie exclaimed. He opened the door wide, allowing him in. Several older goblins lounged in the living room, sipping dark sludge from jars. Morgan handed him the chest and the key. Petrie clasped the thing, and his eyes lit up, like a child about to open a gift. He undid the lock as quickly as he could and ripped the lid wide. He lifted the wand from Graft's palm and smelled it. His wide grin turned to the others. "The boy did it." All of them stood and surrounded the chest. They hollered and patted Morgan's back. "You did what none of the others could do," Petrie exclaimed. "So fast, too." He touched Morgan's cheeks with his fingertips. "Why do you look so pale?" Morgan felt solemn and beat. He had no other expression to portray, so he shrugged. "It's over now," he said. "I'm so proud of you." "You what?" Morgan asked. "We will gather everyone, induct you officially. You'll be one of us." One of the elders picked the hand up by the pinky, examined it. "Really clean work, child. You have skill." A bit of life returned to Morgan's eyes. He slouched down in his chair. "No one else thinks so," he said. "Fools," Petrie roared. He stood and fetched a sack from a rickety drawer. He tossed it to him. Morgan undid the lace and looked within. "This is hundreds. What is this?" You didn't think I wasn't going to reward you for your work, did you? The goblin asked. We need you, Morgan. He clutched the sack and stowed it in his pocket. He nodded and walked toward the door. Good night, Petrie. Sela didn't show to school the next day. After a small attempt to concentrate, Morgan skipped class. He found her by the creek. She sat with her back to the willow, holding a part of a branch in one hand. With the other, she used small slivers of black ether and whittled away at it. When a slice dissolved, she'd form another, again and again until the wood took shape of a man, with long hair and a goatee, armor and a wand. Morgan sat beside her. She turned to look at him, tears trickling from both eyes. He wiped them off and put an arm around her. What happened? Are you okay? He asked. The Nung'l attacked my dad last night, she said. What? He asked. He squeezed tighter. Her chin caved. I don't understand how they got away with it. None of them have any formal training. Maybe not like we have, Morgan said. But they've been taught to kill. She shook her head. My dad, though, he's been trained in academy. I don't understand. Why'd they do it? I don't know, said Morgan. What an awful species. All of them. Maybe it wasn't a goblin. Only a goblin could do this. They're disgraceful, hateful creatures. They'll blindly follow what anyone tells them. And the enforcers don't? Sela's voice hardened. What's that supposed to mean? Morgan looked out onto the trickling water. He took a breath. Maybe if he had focused on something else, didn't target them so much, maybe they wouldn't be so hateful. She looked up at him, eyes soaked. I don't know, Morgan continued. None of the council's academies will accept them, right? What would you do? I thought Father was going to let them enroll. Morgan shook his head. Not until I graduate. Everyone thinks it'll take opportunities away from the people. Sela buried her face into his pit. He squeezed her tighter. Not today, she said with a muffled voice. I don't need this today. Her voice fractured and weakened. He hasn't left the medicine room yet. They left him for dead. Morgan undid the lace in her hair, letting her locks fall freely. He wrapped it around his wrist. He touched his nostrils to her head, inhaling the familiar scent of wildflowers. He took his arm off her. That's not true, he said. She lifted her head and looked at him. What? She asked. Morgan knew what he did. You know who did it. What do you mean? He asked. You know all of them. I know you've spoken with them. Not all of them. Morgan, I can tell when you're lying. Her eyes were so wet, there was no way he looked like anything but a blob of color. Don't do this to me today, she whispered. Morgan looked back into her eyes, about to cry himself. You'll never look at me the same, he said. She wiped her tears, furrowed her brow, absorbed in thought. I already don't, she said after a minute. Morgan looked to the ground. There's a lot going on. This is so much more complicated than it seems. This is centuries of injustice. She brushed his cheek, working to his lower jaw. She squeezed tight. Tell me, she said softly. His tear hit her thumb. Her chin quivered. Her tears started to flood. She looked up at him again, this time with a face so mortified he almost didn't recognize her. You? She asked. Morgan cried, unable to hold back anymore. I had to, he said. You know I had to. She stood up. Morgan refused to look at her. Eventually he did. She was staring at him, shaking, unable to speak. Both her hands boiled with black. Morgan didn't say a word. She punched, the energy smacking Morgan into the hard rocks of the creek bed. He looked up from the icy water, unable to breathe, as Sela's blurry figure sprinted into the distance. When night fell, He met the others in the deep woods. The goblins were scattered around a ring of hollowed trees. The place was of perfect size and discretion. They must have met there 1,000,000 times. Each of them wore their ceremonial cloaks. When Morgan arrived, Petrie rushed to him and handed him one. He held a spear which pierced Graft's mangled hand. "The man of the hour," the goblin yelled. "The one who took Graft's wand right from his bloody hand." He paused to cackle. "Morgan Bane." Few of the others cheered. "Sit, boy, sit," Petrie continued, gesturing Morgan onto a makeshift throne crafted from an enormous trunk. Morgan, moving with caution, did as he was told. The goblin pulled out a wooden rod from the inner folds of his cloak. On the end of it, a long white fang with a black tip. "You look scared, boy," he said. "I'm not scared," Morgan returned. "Uneasy, then." Morgan thought for a moment, but shook his head. He didn't know how he felt. It was new, all of this. He looked up at the goblin hunched over him, watched him look onto the crowd, locking eyes with Cedro, who was still bruised and swollen. Petrie handed the spear to a goblin left of him. He grabbed hold of Morgan's wrist, pulled the cloak sleeve up to his elbow. He pinned it to the armrest of the throne. He held up the rod with his other hand. "A hollow fang from the rarest serpent on the island. Extinct by most records," Petrie said. "Fervor's creation, of course." He held Morgan's palm up, digging the tooth into his forearm. Morgan winced from the pain. The goblins watched as Petrie did this. He dug and scraped into the boy for minutes before pulling up and stowing the tool. He licked his thumb and wiped away the blood, revealing a small sprig, a hollow branch of black ink on his arm. Small leaves stemmed off it, a simple design. "The sprig of death," said Petrie, comparing it to the symbol on his own forearm. "For the growth of life." Cheers came from the crowd. "Welcome to—" Cedro's scream interrupted him. He was pulled into the dark woods, disappeared. The goblins all took stance, alert, and then his head rolled back to the middle of them. Everyone wailed. "Graft!" one of them yelled. They looked in all directions. Petrie pulled Graft's wand from his cloak and pointed it to where Cedro was snatched. Then Cog went flying, and his head came flying back. "The enforcers are here!" shouted one of them, barging up to the throne. Morgan stood up, fists at his side. He walked toward the center, to the goblins being shredded one by one. The sight made Morgan queasy. Their brutalized corpses reaffirmed it for him. He had done the right thing. He looked at Cedro's head, thought of their last interactions. His whole body started to tremble. He stood in the middle, eyes panning in all directions, waiting for the next kill. An enforcer walked up in full uniform, without a wand. Her armor nearly fell off her, it was so big. Morgan's shoulders softened. "Seela," he said, "you shouldn't be here." She held up her black, crackling fists. "Come on," he said, hands out. "This isn't what you think it is." Black matter formed around Morgan's neck, tightening. "I thought I knew you," she said. "You do," Morgan tried to get the words out. He fell to his knees. She came closer, held her shoulders broad, her chest out. She looked disgusted. Petrie stepped in front, stowing the wand back into his cloak folds and replacing it with the sprig. At the sight of the weapon, none of the goblins made a sound. They inched farther out of the way. Petrie whipped his wrist. A dark purple smoke plumed out of the sprig, and Seela was consumed whole. As its energy depleted, the smoke wafted down to the forest floor. Seela's lifeless body fell with it. Morgan was released. He grabbed hold of her and stood, shaking. Petrie's pupils twitched as he took in the slaughter. "No more," he wailed. "The next to die is Graft." He looked at Morgan like it was a command. Morgan looked down at Seela's body in his arms, up at Petrie. "Isn't this enough?" he asked, but he couldn't help it. He kept examining the field of bodies, the forest floor painted burgundy. "You know it isn't." Morgan looked at the goblin's face, absorbing the horror in his eyes. He nodded and walked slowly away, carrying Sela's corpse home. The remaining goblins moved out of his way, not making even a breath of a sound. Malachi hadn't come home in the days that passed. This was such a common occurrence that Morgan had learned to ignore it. He wandered into the study, stood surrounded in several stories of bookshelves. Many of them were his father's own journals. Many of the rest were written by his ancestors. Books fell to the rug as he climbed the shelves, uncapping boxes and searching tirelessly. At last, he pulled a thin case with a velvet interior, his father's wand. He took it to the willow and sat next to the small mound where he had buried Sela. Wildflowers grew at her head. He sat with her as the water trickled down, carving into the earth, smoothing rocks, listening, breathing, but not thinking much at all. He looked at the sprig etched into his arm, above Sela's hair lace. The scent of it drenched his eyes, softened his heart. He tapped the wand to the tattoo, thinning and stretching its color. At the top of the twig, he dragged the ink around and around, layers and layers of thin petals, until the top of the sprig led to a vibrant bloom, an Agoseris. The image of that forest floor bruised his thoughts. Graft remained on the loose. He touched the dirt with 2 fingers, eyes closed. He tried to absorb this moment, this calm, as if he could at all, before tying the key around his neck, before night fell again. As formidable waves crashed into the boulders below, Mavis Bane slid the casket lid over her cousin's still body. It was the last time Kavadi would see his brother's face. Mavis had whittled the box herself with ether, turned it to a brilliant glossy black. After the crowd of goblins had said their final goodbyes, they watched as dark energy consumed the casket. Mavis lowered it but an inch over the ocean, and it floated farther and farther from the mansion. Kavadi watched as his brother drifted slowly away from him forever. He thought more about what the young goblin asked him. Morgan's relationship to Kavadi had never been warm, but full of jealousy and resentment. Hugdal was right. There was little warmth to Morgan at all. The coldest killer Tatu had ever seen. He drew his magic with a strength few could comprehend. Not from fire, like Kavadi, but from a darkness colder than ice. The lone substance filling the universe's vast emptiness. And yet, he had given him his life. When the casket became just a dot against the sliver of sun remaining, Mavis pressed a swift palm toward the tiles below her feet, sending Morgan's cold body into the frozen depths forever. Kavadi could almost feel his brother hit the ocean floor. That's when he felt something else, among the crippling cold. That's when he realized it had been there, flickering, wishing to be freed the entire time. Present when Morgan sliced each victim to pieces, present when he fought for even the cruelest goblins to receive an education, present when the village mob murdered his mother in defiance, present when the beast slayed his father, present when he filled the role of headmaster, present when Tatu nearly crumbled by his own hand, present when he jumped in front of the blast that was meant for his brother, and present, too, when his corpse sank deep into the icy void for eternity, was a fire, hidden, one Kavadi couldn't conjure in a dream.